Hello everyone, I'm here today to do my wrap up for December 2024 and I have read 14 books this month and 3,813 pages and 1 hour and 93 of listening. It is quite a lot. I don't know what happened. I guess the holidays I've had just more time. We don't celebrate Christmas, but still things are not as busy as other times of the year, so that's probably why. But yeah, 14 books is good. I'm happy with it, and let's just go through them. The first book that I finished in December is The Serviceberry by Robin Wall Kimmerer, which I did in audiobook, and it's a non-fiction about the gifting culture of nature and how we can implement that into our society, how Native American societies often implement that kind of thing into their fundamental workings rather than how capitalism treats everything as a thing that can be solved, more of a gratitude and giving and gift giving to other people, and how nature does that to us, and be thankful for the things that we are given and not choose more than we need, that kind of thing. I love Robin Wall Kimmerer. I love this. The next book that I finished is Entangled Life by Merlin Sheldrake. And this is about mushrooms and about the different way in which fungi are in our lives, let's say, and the different ways that fungi are also used in different things. Like there was one chapter about how they are often used in packaging, or often not, but there is some fungi that can be used in packaging because it makes like the fluffy and stuff instead of using like the styrofoam kind of stuff. It has some nice illustrations, and yeah, I liked it. I think this was less groundbreaking or interesting than I thought it was going to be for me. So in that sense I was a little bit underwhelmed by this, in the way that everyone loved it and everything like that, but that doesn't mean it's a bad book. It's just my expectations were a little bit higher, I will say. The next book I finished was this little one. It's White Horse by Bianca, and this kind of follows this girl that and her cousin, and they are like together a lot of the time and they share a lot together, and then this girl's cousin becomes an adolescent and goes into puberty and all of the things that that implies, and then how that affects their relationship. It was cute. I enjoyed it. Then the next book I read was an ebook, and that was Arid Dreams by Duanwad Pimwana. And this was a collection of short stories, and they were mostly about the everyday and the hard conditions of life and of these people. I think they are in Thailand. And it was fine. Short stories are not my favorite way to consume literature, and this one was just not super memorable. Then the next one I read was The Britannias by Albinia, and this was not what I expected, to be honest. It has 12, I think it's 12 different parts in which she goes through 12 different islands in the UK and around Ireland, and different societal norms that they have there. A lot of them were very women oriented, and different kind of like ways in which society would work around the UK, and some of the things were interesting, but overall I think this book was a little bit messy and a little bit I didn't see the point. Like there was not even a conclusion at the end telling you kind of what you should take away from this book, and I'm not sure I took away anything from this book. And there was also one thing that kind of annoyed me a little bit, because as I said, it goes through different islands, and at the beginning of each chapter you have like the shape of the island, but it doesn't give you like one map where you can see all the islands together and like if they are close to, I don't know, north, south, Scotland, Ireland. It doesn't tell you. I knew a couple of them, and then I could know those particular ones where they were, and of course I can Google it, but it's so simple to just put them up to see where they are. I don't know why that was not done, but yeah, I also found it like very messy and very like there was not a lot of point on this. I guess if you are interested in the history, very niche history of the UK and Ireland, this might be interesting, but for me it was just like, I don't know, there was no bigger point to be made that I could see, and so for me this was a dud. Then the next book that I finished was this brick, which is The Earth Transformed by Peter Frankopan, and this goes through the history of the world from like dinosaur age or even farther down. It's 4.5 billion years ago, and it looks at how the societies were affected by the climate and how the climate was affected by the societies that live in those. So of course there is climate change in here and the Industrial Revolution, but there are also talk about why agriculture was developed at the time that it was developed, and it was developed at the same time in several different places, and why were those the best conditions, and so how that affected the evolution of society, and how, I don't know, things like cities affected nature and therefore nature changed, and then nature changed societies again. I thought it was well done and it was well researched, and I enjoyed the points that it was trying to make. I just didn't think it was as groundbreaking as I thought it was gonna be, because I know that he is a very loved author, and I thought there was a little bit more, I don't know, depth maybe. As I said, it's a very detailed and very well researched thing, so it's not like it doesn't go into depth into like the scenarios or whatever, but it just, I don't know, it like the things that he was explaining were not revolutionary. Those are things that, the kind of things someone tells you and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense, and then you move on, rather than this like brain moment in which your world changes. So yeah, it was okay, it was fine. Then the next book I finished was The Fox Was Ever the Hunter by Herta Müller, which is about the Romanian regime of Cartarescu, and we follow a few characters that are trying to like fight against it, but obviously it's difficult and they have to hide, and sometimes they're not sure, and some of the characters just don't want anything to do with it and they just want to live their life, a little bit like that kind of thing. And I found that the story was interesting, but mostly what I felt was that the writing style was too overpowering, so it's very flowery and it's very poetic and it's very, very slow, and I don't know if that was to the detriment of the book for me, because it just took me out of the story and it took me out of what we're actually trying to say, basically. The next book that I finished was I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman, and this is very hype lately. It's an old book, but it has recently had a resurgence and it's very, very hype, and I can see why. I really enjoyed this. This is a dystopian science fiction kind of thing, but it's mostly focusing on the aftermath of that dystopian world, and it doesn't have a big plot, and it follows a lot of years. So the main character of this book at the very beginning, she's around 15, and at the end of the book she's around 60, and basically at the beginning we know that there is these women that are being exploited. They live in cages and they are kind of being exploited to work these very boring jobs, and they are treated really badly, and then something happens and they are liberated, and then the rest of the book just follows them surviving as a society, and make do with the things they have, the things they find, settle down. And obviously she's by far the youngest of these women, and she's also the only one that didn't know how the world was before these events happened. We never know what the events are. We were not told like what actually happened to the world. We just know that something happened, and that this girl was born, or like she was very small when this happened, so she doesn't have any recollection of anything before. And so it's a little bit about like the fact that the other women miss things and want things that she never even have a concept of, so she never has those wants and those needs, and so like that difference and what she actually does want from her life. And also because she is the youngest of all of them by far, at some point, one by one, they all eventually die because they become really old, and so she becomes the only person alive in this world. And what does she want to do with her life when she's alone like that? And that's basically the whole book. We just follow her doing those things, and it is a very different dystopian than your average plotty dystopian, and I found it very insightful and very interesting to think from the point of view of someone that has never lived anything before that dystopian world, so she doesn't know what she's missing in a way. Yeah, it was very interesting. I really enjoyed it. I think it was really well done. The next book I finished was 3 Summers by Margarita Liberaki, and this is a book about these 3 women. When they are young, it's like a coming of age story of these 3 women, and it follows them during 3 different summers, so it's divided in 3 different parts, and they tell the story of them in those 3 summers, and it's kind of like, I don't know if other people have this, but in Spain it's very common for people when they're young, like your family comes from a village, so these people tend to spend the whole summer in the village, and the kids as well. So when some like school holidays come around for summer, everyone packs their things and goes to the village, and that's kind of the same thing in this book. So these girls get together every summer and they're good friends, but they don't normally see each other during the year so much, and they only see them in the summer when they get back to the village, and you kind of follow their lives in like these chunks, and them building, like growing up and building their lives and having boyfriends and husbands and all of that stuff. It was endearing. I enjoyed it. It was a bit nostalgic in a way, and it was fun to read. It was nothing groundbreaking again, but it was a lot of fun to read. Then the next book I finished was Life Begins on Friday by Ioana Pârvulescu, and this is another book that is set in Bucharest, so in Romania, and it's set, I think it's the end of the 1800s, and we follow several people in this street. So something happens in this street, and you kind of get the reaction of everybody and how they are trying to solve whatever situation they think they're in around that event, and I was enjoying it at the beginning, but then I don't know, the writing style got a little bit tiring, because it is kind of jokey in a way. If you have ever read Leonard and Hungry Paul, that kind of humorous tone to the thing, that's also the kind of tone that is here, and I just didn't like it. Like, I liked it at the beginning, but at some point it gets tiring and I don't want to read this book anymore. So yeah, this one was okay. The story was also not particularly interesting to me, which maybe that's also why I didn't connect with this book. But yeah, I just didn't connect to the characters, didn't connect to the story, and the writing style only worked for me for a certain amount of time, so it was okay. Then I read The Lake by Bianca Bellová, and this was about a boy called Nami, and his mom is lost, or like he doesn't know where she is, and so the book goes around him looking for his mom, and he knows that his mom was connected, like he never met her I think, or for a long time, so he knows that she's connected to this lake in some capacity, and there's kind of like a bit of a mystery of who she is and where she is and all of that, and I just found it a little bit blunt. Like nothing stood out to me about this book. The characters were not super strong, the plot was so yeah, it was a bit of a nothing book. Then the next book I read was The Color of Magic by Terry Pratchett, and I was very excited to read Terry Pratchett because I had heard so many good things about him, and the way I will describe this is as the fantasy version of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The same humor, the same kind of nonsensical situations, the same kind of thing. So we follow this wizard that is not really a wizard because he didn't finish his education, and he's in a pub or something like that, and then he meets this man that is a tourist from the continent, and what that means is like in this world, the world is flat and it's on top of a turtle, like it used to be thought that it was, like in the Middle Ages, and so like they are supposed to live in the flat part, and this guy comes from like the other side, and yeah, it's supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be this very quirky thing, and I understand that, and I could enjoy to a certain extent, but I just don't think that kind of nonsensical storytelling is for me. I also thought that The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was fine, and that I understand why people enjoy it. Same for this. I love that you love it, but I don't think this is for me. Then the next book I finished was To Love a Woman by Diana Bellessi, which is a poetry collection, and it's a bilingual poetry collection, so on this side it's in Spanish and on this side it's in English. I think the author is from Argentina, and they're mostly, I think the biggest and longest poems is basically about lesbian love. There is also a few poems about colonization and the colonization of the Americas, which I prefer to the love ones, but I think that I understand why this would have been important, to be so blunt and so open about professing lesbian love around. I think that's great. It's not something that I need, but I can totally understand other people need it, and I'm glad that this is there for her. What I found the most interesting about this actually is that because it is a bilingual translation, and I have read bilingual poetry collections before, but never in two languages that I could understand both, and like I'm fairly fluent in both. And so it was very interesting to me. Like the most interesting part was for me to see how they translated the poems, basically. And I realized that Spanish is a lot more lyrical than English. I think it does sound a lot more pretty and lyrical in Spanish, which is often the problem that I have when I read books like novels in Spanish, is that it seems like it's always overwritten because Spanish is a lot more lyrical, but in a poetry collection it's a plus. So that was interesting to me to realize. And then the last book that I finished this month is The Empusium by Olga Tokarczuk, and I love Olga Tokarczuk. I love her writing. I'm always a little bit, I don't know if intimidated by her books, like before I start reading them, and then when I start them I just realized why I love her so much and her writing so much. It's just the right amount of philosophy and description and beautiful language, and the right amount of like just plot and I don't know, interesting stuff. Like sometimes I start her books and I'm in a ride and I don't know where I'm going and I have no idea what we're talking about, but I'm just very engrossed in it. And this is what happened with this book for me. So this book follows this young Polish boy that goes to, I think it's in Austria. It's called Gorbersdorf, which at the end it has a list of the current names of those places now, and that is Sokolowsko, which sounds Polish. So maybe it's in the current Poland that used to be, I don't know, German or Austrian or something else. But anyway, he goes to this not asylum, but like health house, and it's based, as far as I know, on The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann. It has a lot of inspiration from that, and I have attempted to read The Magic Mountain. I think I made it like 100 pages in, and then I was not interested anymore because it was a very manly novel, and so I think this one makes fun of that. There is big sections there about men in this sanatorium talking about how women were inferior, and there was a funny one that they were discussing how women are inferior in literature and why there's no woman that ever wrote anything good. And then someone asked, like, how do you know? Have you read Women? And he's like, no, I have never read a book by a woman, but that's why I'm here, and that's what makes sense. So, yeah, for sure they cannot write very good. That's why I never read anything by a woman, and it was just funny. It was making fun of them. So yeah, I enjoyed that very much. It does also have some of like a horror element to the book, because something is happening in the sanatorium. At the beginning it's kind of, oh, everything is nice, and then suddenly they find this woman's body, and it's more about, like, it seems to be a tradition that happens every once in a while, but at the same time this village, even though they have a sanatorium for tuberculosis, they don't have a cemetery because they say that death doesn't have a place there, which, yeah, indicates that there's something a little bit darker and a little bit more messed up going on behind. And there's and I would say that this one reminded me more of Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead than any of her other books, because it's in the plottier side of the spectrum of what she writes. So yeah, I enjoyed this one a lot. As I said, it's not my favorite Tokarczuk, but I still really enjoyed her writing and the way that she builds characters and the conversations that she had through the book. I thought it was it's funny, and it's deep, and it's interesting, and yeah, I'm glad I read it. So yeah, those are all the books that I read in December. Now I want also to talk a little bit about January and what I am going to do in January and my TBR situation. So as every year I put a goal to read my ancient TBR in the year, so all the books that I had before the year. So right now I have 45 books in my ancient TBR, so there are 45 books that I got in 2024, and I want to read all of those and finish all of those in 2025. And to do that, in my goals video for 2025, I did talk a little bit about some strategies that I was going to use, because normally I would expect to have about 20 books in that list, and this year it's a little bit longer than that. So I thought I would come up with some ways to make it a little bit more fun. And one of the things that I wanted to do was to read the oldest book in my TBR, so the one I added the longest ago, and to read the the thickest book in my TBR, so the one with the most number of pages. So if I look at my story graph TBR, the one that has been there the longest is Catalan Street by Magda Szabo. So I am planning to read this in January, and in fact it's probably the one that I'm going to start the first, because I'm very excited. I really like Magda Szabo, so I think I'm going to start this one the first. And then the longest book in my TBR according to Storygraph is Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. There is a problem with that, because I was planning to get that from the library, and I checked the library website. They have one copy, and it's out of the library, and it was supposed to have been back in the library in October. So the person that has that book is currently like 2 months late to give it back, which means I have no idea if it's ever going to go back. I have put a hold on the book, so that either the person gets the book back, or the library knows that people are interested in that book, and if it never comes back, they eventually purchase it. But I doubt it's going to come in to the library in January. So what I did was to take the second thickest book in my TBR, the second longest book in my TBR, and that will be the one that is officially in my January TBR, and that is Wellness by Nathan Hill, which is also from the library, by the way. But this one, they had several copies and several of them were in, so I could grab it right away. And as far as I know, this one is about social media. I have heard very good things about it in the last year and a half, so that's why I was in my TBR. I'm a little bit hesitant about it, because I'm not sure if social media is something I'm super interested in, but people I trust have liked it, so I have it in my TBR for January officially. So those are the two books that are like part of this challenge that I'm kind of doing. The other thing that I wanted to do was to clear throughout my digital TBR, and that includes the books that I have saved in Everand, and the books that I have saved in my Kobo Plus, which is like the Kindle Unlimited sort of thing in the Netherlands. And so this month I wanted to go through the Everand books, and I have 5 left, and I don't know if Everand is going to let me read all of them, because sometimes it takes things away, but I'm hoping it will. And the books that I have in stock for me to read are A Light in the Woods by Dorthe Nors. I have read before from Dorthe Nors and not love it, but this is a nature non-fiction memoir sort of thing, so it's a very different thing, so I'm hoping I will enjoy it more. Then I have The Easy Life by Marguerite Duras, and I have no idea what this one is about. I think it's about coming of age, but it's in one of my challenges for the year, so that's there. Then I have Things Remembered and Things Forgotten by Kyoko Nakajima, which is a Japanese fiction. I think it's supposed to be like the traditional quirky kind of magical realism Japanese kind of fiction, I think. I don't know. Then I have Forbidden Notebook by Alba de Cespedes, and I have Edo's Souls by Stella Gaitano. I don't have a lot of information about what those are about either, but those are the 5 that are on my Everand TBR, and I will like to add these 2. So 5 more books there. And then that might be enough for my month, I don't know. But if it's not, and if I have space for something else, I have 2 pile of possibilities kind of books that I would like to read if I have time. The first one is Blue Machine by Helen Shersky, and this is a non-fiction about the ocean, and it's as far as I understand kind of non-human centered, which sounds very interesting, and it won the Wainwright's Prize, I think, and it also inspired Playground by Richard Powers, which I read in 2024, so I am very interested to read this very very soon, and after I finish all of those books, I think this one would be the next one I pick, maybe while I'm reading ebooks, because I like to have a physical book along when I'm reading ebooks, and because this is non-fiction, it probably will fit quite well. And then the other one that I would like to get up to if I have time, is Kairos by Jenny Eppenberg. I have a few Jenny Eppenbergs in my backlog, and I would like to make some dent through them. And this won the International Booker last year, and I think it's the only International Booker winner that I haven't read. So yeah, this plus the ebooks are kind of like what I'm hoping, but I don't know. These ones are the ones that I kind of feel like I have to and I want to read, and these ones are more like if I get to them kind of situation. And also the ebooks, I think the ebooks are my priority because I do want to cancel my Everand after January. So yeah, those are all the books I wanted to talk to you about today. Let me know what you read in December, what you're planning to read in January, and until next video, bye!